3, 2.
There's Harry. Making a cameo in light of his Dolphins crushing it tonight. All right, here we go. This is the Pick Six Podcast, guys. And this Sunday Night Super Friends, that's Will Brinson. That's John Breech. I'm Ryan Wilson. And this is a Sunday Night Super Friends Week 3 NFL Recap 2023 edition. All right, so here's the plan, just so we're clear, because we get a little pushback from folks every now and then. We're going to hit on our top 10 takeaways. Not every single football game. From week 3, the biggest storylines, the best players, the top plays, and those suspect coaching decisions that bring us together as a nation. Hello, Josh McDaniels. Man, it's an awesome day of football. First things first, though, remember, give us a thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube at NFL on CBS. And, of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, Breech, so you never miss a show. All right.
Hey, Wilson, before we get started, do you have a teleprompter?
We're going in, Breech.
Do you have a teleprompter?
We saw
Harry. Oh, my God. You have a teleprompter, don't you?
We saw producer Harry flashing his Dolphins jersey. So first up, we're going to South Florida.
Breech, are you wearing Tanner?
Where the Dolphins dropped a 70 burger on the Broncos. By the way, Breech, that's the only fourth time in NFL history that a team has scored 70, and you have to go back to 1966 to find out the last time it happened. The Dolphins, meanwhile, are 3-0, in large part because Tua has been healthy. When he's healthy, he has been dealing. So think about it after how last year played out for him with all the concussions. This year around, he's been hit 5 times in 3 games. That's it, 1 sack.
Real quick, funny you should mention last year, Wilson, because through 3 weeks this year, his stats are the same exact as through 3 weeks last year.
That's wild.
Of 101 completions, attempts, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, exact same. 3-0 this year, 3-0 last year. Somehow, even with a 70-point game, Tua is the same guy.
That's pretty crazy.
Is not getting hit.
And he's not getting hit because it feels like that last year. You don't even remember the first 3 games because of the concussions. And Brinson, let me set you up and we'll get right to it here. Here's my big takeaway. Tua is the best quarterback in the NFL. This is the best offense in the NFL. Mike McDaniel, the second-year head coach, is the best play caller in the NFL. So, Brinson, I'll ask you first if you agree with that. And the follow-up will be the same question I asked you 2 weeks ago. Is Tua worth that $55 million a year plus money?
Okay, so a couple of answers to your couple of questions. One, I think the difference too is like last year they beat the Patriots 20-7, beat the Ravens 42-38, and then beat the Bills 21-19. It feels like to me that Tua is in much greater, and those are pretty good defenses too last year, by the way. Feels like to me that Tua is in much greater control of this offense this year, and that everybody in year 2 of Mike McDaniel is much more comfortable, which makes total sense. Like, we gave Mike McDaniel a ton of credit last year because he this cool little hipster dude comes in, takes over the team, runs it really well. They have these issues with the concussion stuff, but like by and large, like a really, really successful first year for Mike McDaniel. He handles the media well. He handles the players well. He his coaches he's just everything really well. Like you get the sense he's going to be a really good coach for a really long time. Now that can change, but I would be surprised if it did. I just feel like much more impressed by the way that Tua's performed in these first 3 weeks this season than last season. Like if you had said, his stats are exactly the same through 3 weeks, do you believe that? I would have said no. His stats can't be as good as they were because he just scored 70 points. They did win in week 2 last year by coming back, just like they did this year when they came back against the Chargers. They've been in a shootout, but they played some decent teams. And I would say that Tua is not the best quarterback in the NFL right now, but I would say that if you were doing a post week 3 MVP poll, that Tua would be the number 1 pick to be the MVP right now as it stands.
What does MVP stand for?
Most valuable player. That doesn't mean he's the best quarterback.
Sort of does.
Okay, so you want to take Tua over Patrick Mahomes? That's what you're saying.
Through 3 weeks, he has been absolutely dealing.
I'm just saying that he's not the best. The best quarterback is something different to me.
That's why we're talking about it.
Breech.
Well, I was just going to say, as crazy as Brinson sounded, because it did sound like he contradicted himself, I actually agree with him that if you mix everything we've said together, I think, Wilson, you said Mike McDaniel is the best play caller. Brinson said that right now through 3 weeks, Tua looks like the best quarterback, but that doesn't mean he is the best. If you're building a franchise and you're having a draft tomorrow, you're not taking Tua over Patrick Mahomes. I don't think so. But here is where your two things kind of mesh. Is that this is from Next Gen Stats. We all saw Tua complete his first 18 pass attempts. It is that Mike McDaniel is putting in these high percentage situations where his average completion probability, according to Next Gen Stats, when he started off going 18-18, was 80.8%.
That is wild.
That means these guys, the routes they're running, they're getting open, and all Tua has to do is not throw the ball straight into the ground, and it should be a completion. But the fact that you have a completion probability that high on 18 straight throws is just that is coaching. That is Mike McDaniel just devising this scheme that, again, we talk about McDaniel being part of the Kyle Shanahan tree. That's what Kyle Shanahan does. He schemes everybody open, except I think Tua's better than Brock Purdy. I think the Dolphins probably have Christian McCaffrey dices us up a little bit, but I'd rather have the receivers that the Dolphins have. Yeah. And then, you can argue about running back, but it's just crazy what Mike McDaniel's done.
Well, I mean, so I think when you look at what the Dolphins are right now as a team, and somebody in the chat saying I look crazy, it's because my son sliced up my nose last night while we were wrestling around the house. Yeah. I know. Yeah. It's like, it's pretty bad.
You should see the other guy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. He's grounded. He's grounded in his room. I think, and I wrote about this in sort of the Sunday Pile, which you can read on CBSSports.com, but like the Dolphins, when you look at their skill position guys, one, they invested highly in these people. Tyreek Hill, they sent a ton of picks, including a first rounder for. Jalen Waddle, high first round pick. Tua, 6th overall, right? High first round pick or whatever. He was 7th. He was 5th and Herbert was 6th. Excuse me, that's right. And then you have Devin Achane, who's a 3rd round pick. You have Raheem Mostert, who wasn't a high pick, but was a priority free agent because of what he'd done in San Francisco in the run game under Mike McDaniel. And what those three guys all have in common as well? Speed. These guys are fast as hell. Like this group, and Tua too is even like pretty quick for his, for what he is. This group is just fast. And I think that's really important because whereas the Niners are maybe like the Niners are so strong and they have speed too, right? Like Debo and Ayuk and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey all fast for their position. The Niners feel like tough and like strong and physical. The Dolphins feel like if the Niners are I'm trying to think of the car comp for the Niners, like it's not a Mack truck or anything like that, but
they're a H2 Hummer, and the Dolphins
or like
are
a Lamborghini
a Dodge Viper.
Yeah. So they have, but so you talk about this it's sort of like a spinoff of Kyle Shanahan's offense, right? You have, as you point out, Breech, Mike McDaniel, who worked for Kyle Shanahan, who's the whole point of these play designs, the whole point of this offense, the whole way he's building it out is to get these guys in open positions and to get them the ball. Tua doesn't have to be the best quarterback. He just has to be the best he just has to be the perfect point guard. And that's what he is. He's really good at it. He makes quick throws, he's a quick processor, quick decision maker, gets the ball, throws an accurate football, and can push the ball down the field if he needs to. But because you have all this speed, it's like every time you get one of these completions into space, it is an absolute threat to be 6 points. And when it all clicks and you have a defense that checks out because it went out on South Beach or something on Saturday night, you end up scoring 70 points.
I'll just push back on that because if you watch Tua's throws, and I went back and watched all his throws for watching some of the young guys as well, no one throws with better anticipation than Tua in the NFL. So you can sort of build it around. And Breech, huge disrespect to you for not calling out Frank Smith, offensive coordinator for the Dolphins, and only mentioning Mike McD, Miami of Ohio grad. But if you just sort of discount that Tua is a function of this offense, and Breech, you mentioned he's better than Brock Purdy. He is miles better than Brock Purdy. And here's the little thought experiment I like to do when we're talking about usually Matt Canada and Kyle Shanahan.
By the way,
let me finish. Let me finish.
Well, don't talk about Matt Canada.
So what if you put Patrick Mahomes in Miami's offense? Are they better than they are with Tua?
Yes.
What do you think, Breech? They're scoring as many points and being as efficient as they have been through 3 games?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. We can disagree on that.
And flip that. If you put Tua on the Chiefs offense, are the Chiefs as good? I don't think so.
Well, there's no one's throwing with better anticipation than Tua. I mean, you can go back and watch some of those throws. Now today, guys were running wide ass open, so that I would ask you to go look at the first two games.
But what I'm saying is not taking away from Tua's anticipation or his intelligence as a quarterback. I'm saying the same thing you are. Like he understands the offense, he anticipates where guys are going to be, and he's putting the ball in great placement exactly where they needed to be. So like. You talk about George Kittle on Thursday night was talking about how the 49ers in the offseason, they study yak tape. Like they just pull tape of guys who've already caught the ball. And how do can you stem up? Can you get vertical? Can you pick up those extra yards? Well, a big part of that is the quarterback delivering the ball in a position where you can easily and quickly receive the ball, turn up field, and start to get vertical and pick up those extra yards after catch. And I think Tua does a fabulous job about that. When I say the point guard and the distribution and the timing and all that, I mean like all of that is anticipation. Like it's not a knock on him. I'm taking Mahomes, Josh Allen, and a healthy Joe Burrow over Tua.
All right, Breech, let me ask you this:
10 out of 10.
Is Tua two-part question? Brinson didn't answer the second part of my other question. Two-part question to you: is Tua, and we're going to move on in a second, is Tua the best quarterback in that draft class? That includes Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. And are you paying him $55 million plus a year?
Oh, Wilson. The answer to the question with Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, obviously, I'm going to say no. It's not even fair to ask me. Maybe Tua can get to a Super Bowl before we put him in
Does he have
the
to win it?
Conversation as Joe Burrow. No, I don't think he has to win it, but I think if you're the Dolphins, all you want to see this season is Tua make it through all 17 games. If he makes it through all 17 games, then you give him the contract. It's that simple. We're only in week 3. Last year in week 3, they were also 3-0. They didn't make the playoffs. We were crowning the Dolphins last year. And granted, it's a lot more exciting to crown a team after they score 70 points because that is absolutely bonkers. But again, 3-0 last year. Let's see if week 4 was actually the game, I think, a Thursday night against the Bengals where Tua got injured. So it's just, let's get through week 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are a lot of games left. There are 14 games left for Miami. And if Tua does make it through healthy and the Dolphins are looking this good, they don't have to score 70 every week. It's okay if they only score 50. But yeah, if he starts all 17 games, I'm absolutely giving him the $55 million year.
Because week 1, you were less certain. Brinson, are you coming around on Breech's
Yeah. I mean, look, I was right about. I read about that too. I mean, like, I don't think it's a matter of, again, it's not a matter of can Tua play well enough to deserve the contract? Like, sure. I mean, I would have thought that last year for most of the year. It's just purely a matter of like, if you give this guy this big contract, like, let's say you give him let's say you gave him this contract because, as Breech pointed out, he has the exact same stats as last year as this year. Let's say you gave him, I guess you couldn't have given the contract last year, but you get the point. If you give him the contract right now, and then the concussion thing happened again, you would have severe buyer's remorse about the contract. And that's
almost
all it
like
is.
having a calf injury.
Well, I was going to say, look, I'll weigh in right here. I'm a little uneasy with the Joe Burrow contract, and I think he absolutely deserved it. So there is always that little thing in the back of your mind that says, and especially if somebody has an injury history, then it is really there just kind of nagging at you. And if you're the owner who is signing the $275 million contract, it's definitely, you got your lawyers talking to you in one ear like, hey, man, we can't insure this, so you got to go ahead and make sure he's not going to get injured.
You know what's a remarkable fact? And I'm going to help you segue, Wilson. The Denver Broncos just lost by 50 points. 50 points. We're 3 weeks into the season. They lost by 50 points, and they don't have the worst point differential in the NFL right now. That is incredible to me.
That is crazy.
You can tell us who it is?
The Bears.
Oh, gosh.
Denver's 53 and the Chicago's 59.
All right, let's move over to...
And if the Bengals lose by 35 on Monday night, it will be them.
Oh, they're not losing by 35. Okay, all right, let's talk about the other team
could lose by 35.
On the other side of the ball there who 100% no-showed. Sean Payton gave his Brandon Staley post-game interview. Brandon Staley last week, Sean Payton this week. He did not want to hear the noise about his team laying down. And Brinson, I came to you to start, but I'll come back to you again because you were an ardent Sean Payton defender, and you thought that he would be the magic elixir that would fix this thing. Now, it's worth pointing out that Sean Payton wanted Vic Fangio to be his defensive coordinator. Vic Fangio was on the other side as part of that ass whooping that they laid on the Broncos. Russ Wilson actually is better. It don't matter. So, again, I'll keep asking this question like I keep asking the $55 million a year Tua question. Is Sean Payton the answer? Because Sean Payton, Peyton isn't the answer, and I think this means he ain't going anywhere. I think it means Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator, might be his seat might be hotter than Brandon Staley's right now.
Yeah, and by the way, the Dolphins did make the playoffs last year, Breech, but Skylar Thompson had to play for him.
Lost, didn't win a
They
playoff
lost
game
to
as
the
well.
Bills. Yeah, they did win a playoff game. Yeah. So shout out to Josh Leggett in the chat who reminded us of that fact that we should remember as professional football writers, but just blindly let Breech lead us
They were
into.
just, Brinson, they were in the playoffs. Their trip was so short, no one remembers it.
The trip was short. That's a fish reference, so we'll get it. Moving on. So yeah, Vance Joseph, super hot seat. Sean Payton, Magic Elixir. It was really more about like Magic Elixir for Russell Wilson. I'm not saying that Russell Wilson's been good, but Russell Wilson didn't give up 70 points.
So Sean Payton bears none of the blame is what I'm hearing?
No, I mean, Sean Payton.
Because Nathaniel Hackett took a lot of flack.
He called it embarrassing and hard to watch. And then the follow-up, the reporter was like, so you called it embarrassing. He's like, yeah. He's like, well, I'm just wondering, what's the question? He's like, when you have a historically embarrassing law, Sean Payton's like, I'm not answering that question. What's next? Look, I mean, understandably pissed off. Wilson, is it you who keeps saying you're like, what if he's like Nathaniel Hackett had the worst coaching job of all time? It's like, what if Sean Payton's the second worst? Somebody keeps saying that.
I didn't say that, but that's a question that should be asked, I would imagine, because what are we doing?
I mean,
Nathaniel Hackett doesn't look like the worst coach in Broncos history anymore, huh?
No, certainly not.
He didn't
through the
lose
first
the game
weeks.
70-20. He was 2-1 after 3 weeks.
What's crazy about the 70 points too is that like you're like, well, the only other time that happened was in 1951. It's like, who was dropping 70 burgers in 51? I mean, I guess you're just running the ball up and down the field. I guess I don't know, but yeah, Russ 23 at 38, 306 touchdown and a pick. Javonte Williams didn't do a whole lot in the run game. Courtland Sutton, okay, they had a couple of touchdowns called back. I thought the offense was fine-ish. 21-10, with like 6:31 left in the or 6:36, excuse me, left in the second quarter. You're down double digits, but you feel like the game is, I mean, somewhat, like somewhat within reach. And then of course, the Dolphins tack on 2 more touchdowns before the Broncos get a field goal. It's 35-13 at half. It was just the rapid speed with which the Dolphins were scoring by virtue of just of the mistakes that the Broncos made. And like the Dolphins, it was like they were running through just wide open. I mean, even that first catch from Tyreek Hill, you see him catch it, you're like, the touchdown catch, you're like, he's going to score very, very easily. Turns a corner, up, gets up the field, and it's 54 yards in. Yeah, I think that this is probably, as you point out, Wilson, a case of, where Sean Payton's going to fire his defensive coordinator. I feel like Sean Payton has got a pretty good track record when he was in New Orleans of not having a short leash, but he also was, Pete Carmichael, he called the plays. Pete Carmichael was his longtime offensive coordinator. So you didn't really have a whole lot of like people that you had to scapegoat. And usually if the defense was decent, you would see like, I think Dennis Allen, he got his head coaching job. It just didn't feel like he fired a ton of people, right?
Here, let me ask Breech a question, because you're getting to a point here. So Justin Simmons was out, Frank Clark was out. You can make excuses if you want, but I don't think there were 70 points, Breech. And let me read you 2 stats from the Miami offensive side of the ball, and then explain to me how Vance Joseph is going to have a conversation with his head coach on Monday morning when they have their little meeting here. The odds of Tua, and you sort of touched on this, and this is next gen stats, the odds of Tua completing every one of his 16 pass attempts in the first half, based on completion probability, 2.2%. He did it. And this other stat I want to read you, again, next gen stats. Everyone at Tyreek Hill's 9 interceptions against the Broncos came on an in-breaking route. 157 yards on in-breaking routes is the most in a game over the last 4 seasons. So again, if I'm Sean Payton and you're Vance Joseph, and I say, hey, how do you explain this, Vance? What are you going to say?
Well, if you're Vance Joseph, at some point you think you would have just said, hey, guys, watch for the in-breaking route with Tyreek Hill, where somebody just says something. But so some of this is all combined, because obviously you're Sean Payton. You're going to get grilled for this and what the offense did. And I see some people saying that Russell Wilson piled up garbage time yards with his 300-yard game. That is not actually the case. Russell Wilson had nearly 200 yards at halftime. If you told a Broncos fan that Russell Wilson, he had 193. If you said Russell Wilson's going to throw for 193 in the first half and be on pace for 400 yards, they would assume that they would have been thrilled. They would have given you any amount of money to see those stats until they also saw
we're down by 3 points, maybe 6 points, maybe we're winning. So nope, you're down 35-13, guys.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Broncos offense wasn't horrible. It was just like the defense. I don't want to say they gave up, but it just seemed like they got out there, realized after, I don't know, 2 possessions, maybe the first play with Tyreek Hill, that they were just completely overmatched, that they watched the wrong film or something this week. And it felt like
they watched the wrong film.
That's what it looked like. And so you got to the first possession of the second half. Dolphins are up 35-13. The Broncos could have gone down, scored, made it 35-20. But when that didn't happen, it really just felt like the defense mailed it in. They're like, we're not coming back. Our offense stinks. We stink. We're done. Let's just not let them score 70. But then the Dolphins scored 70 anyway. So I think heads are going to have to roll. If you're Sean Payton, this is too embarrassing of a loss for someone not to lose their job. So I won't be surprised if Vance Joseph is gone. Maybe this week, maybe next week, but I don't think he's going to be around for more than one season with Peyton.
Well, so, I mean, it's like, as I pointed out too, they were
move on quickly on this. Give me something. Give me like 1 minute, so we'll keep moving. So we don't
it's fine. I mean, like they were down 21-10, right? They kicked a field goal to make it 21-10, and so you're like, all right, this is going pretty poorly. Let's just try and get to half, right? With I think 6:41 left. Like let's just try and stem the tide here. The Dolphins march. They punch it in with a minute, like just under the 2-minute warning, with a Raheem Mostert 20-yard touchdown run, and then immediately after on the next possession, Courtland Sutton fumbles after he catches a pass from Russell Wilson. The Dolphins take it back to the 3 and bang, punch it in. It's 35-10. So it's like at that point, your defense is like, dude. I mean, what? Like, I mean, as Breech points out, they probably checked out.
So. Just one word answer. Brinson, are you any hope this Broncos team makes the playoffs?
No.
Breech?
Is there any hope they make the playoffs now?
This year, yeah. By the way, 0-3, typically 2.5% chance to make the playoffs, and I think for the Broncos it's probably a negative number. Quickly, most losses by 50 or more points in NFL history. The Broncos have 3, and the other team that has 3, the Rochester Jeffersons, who were last in the NFL in 1925.
They tied the freaking Jeffersons?
The Jeffersons, not the George Jeffersons, the Rochester Jeffersons.
But to get a Rochester Jeffersons jersey.
All right, Breech, coming back to you. I'm going to give you 3 upsets from Sunday's action. You tell me which one was worse, because I have an idea. Texans over the Jaguars. Colts overtime over the Ravens. Or the Cardinals beating the the breaks off the Cowboys? Which one are you going with?
I am going to go with the Cardinals beating the doo-doo out of the Cowboys. We're talking upsets now, so I'm not going to go too deep into this on the Cowboys side, but I will say the Cardinals, Jonathan Gannon, this is like underrated who I would give my coach of the year vote to through my NFC. I'd give the AFC version to Mike McDaniel. But what Gannon has done, this team, everyone thought they were going to go 0-17. They looked horrible. Everyone thought they were tanking. And you look at what they've done this season. I mean, they're legitimately 6 plays away from being 3-0, which is absolutely bonkers when you think. I mean, they led Washington 16-10 in the fourth quarter. They had that 28-7 lead against the Giants in the third quarter, and they smoked the Cowboys.
Their first regular season depth chart had an or at quarterback.
They're doing all this with Josh Dobbs at their quarterback, who literally got signed to the team like 2 weeks before the season started. Think of your Dak Prescott or Sam Howell or Daniel Jones. You're getting outplayed by this guy who signed with the team less than a month ago. I mean, it's absolutely nuts. And that's really credit to, really Jonathan Gannon. He's been able, I feel like people were laughing at him in August. Now he's kind of getting the last laugh with, hey, look, we're actually not that bad and we're going to play tough. And it's to his credit that this team didn't go out there and flop and fall on their face. And now I think you have to take Arizona seriously. So I think the I know that's weird. It's just not that they're going to make the playoffs, but that they can win any.
They're not a homecoming game.
And this is not a joke. This is serious. Josh Dobbs was doing something cool with this, but September is Alopecia Awareness Month, which is pretty. I mean, it's pretty awesome that Josh Dobbs is out here balling out.
He's also an aerospace engineer, which also helps. And by the way, I just want to follow up quickly before I come to you, Brinson. Drew Petzing, he might be the youngest OC in the NFL for the Cardinals, had a relationship with Dobbs from their time together in Cleveland, but that's still no expectations that he was going to do the things that he did today. Brinson,
one more thing on that game.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
One more thing. Shout out to Matt Prater, who hit a 62-yard field goal just before halftime, even though the holder held the ball with the laces in. This
Don't
is,
matter.
you know, we all know our Ray Finkel jokes. You don't hold the ball with the laces in because it kind of knuckles, and it did knuckle, and it was a low line drive, and somehow the thing stayed straight for 62 yards and went.
So, yeah.
How much do you think the way the Cardinals are playing affects their decision on when they bring Kyler Murray back?
They're going to be like, Kyler, we're paying Josh Dobbs 1/20th of what we pay you, and he's better. So
Well,
no, I'm just kidding. I don't think Kyler's better, but it makes it dicey. You don't have to rush Kyler back.
It depends. If he wants to play within the confines of the offense, I'm sure he's an upgrade, but we'll see. A couple other things. Matt Prater, turns out he's better than Justin Tucker, at least on one day. Justin missed a 61-yarder. And Brinson, I'm going to go with the Texans over the Jaguars as the biggest upset of the day. Do you agree with that?
No, I will go with Colts over Ravens, but you can explain Texans over Jaguars while I.
No, you go ahead. I was setting you up.
Oh, I know.
I had an idea what you're going to say.
Yeah, I know. I wrote it in the rundown. I'll go with Colts over Ravens, and here's why. I think that Cowboys losing to the Cardinals, like in terms of point spread, obviously the biggest one. But I think the Cowboys probably kind of mailed us, and like, we're going to go to Arizona and beat the brakes off of this. Like, we got a third straight bad team to start the year. Like, let's just go do what we do, boys. And I think they walked in, they took the Cardinals lightly, and it's not going to hurt them over the long haul in terms of the NFC. However, and I was going to say Texans over Jaguars because that's a pretty huge one. But I think the Jaguars can bounce back. I have major concerns about their offensive play calling. Doug Peterson may need to step in, and of course, like, can their offense get better? But the Colts over the Ravens, they did this with a backup quarterback against an undefeated Baltimore team, and you have and I think that, like, you have the Baltimore Colts factor, which nobody really actually cares about, but kind of a revenge game, maybe, like a really old revenge game. And I think
it'd be a revenge game for Baltimore, Brinson. They're the ones that lost.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, you can do it either way. But you have Gardner Minshew comes in for Anthony Richardson. You have Shane Steichen winning this game, which really, like, you're a first-year coach. You got a banged up rookie quarterback who's missing the game with concussion issues, and then you go and win it with your backup quarterback. That's huge. Colts defense plays really well, and I think now the Colts could have beaten the Jaguars in week 1. They smoked the Texans in week 2. The Colts aren't that far from being 3-0, and I think you can make a reasonable case that in the AFC South, where the Jaguars are struggling, the Titans have struggled, the Texans have struggled. The Colts are a viable contender to win that division in a year where nobody thought they would be even in the mix. Like, they're like 9 months removed from having Jeff Saturday as their coach. And so for me, that's why this win over the division leading Ravens, who were a huge favorite, I think 7.5 points in this game, beating the Ravens straight up with your backup quarterback, when you're undermanned like the way they were, to me, and when no Jonathan Taylor still, he's on the sidelines. Maybe now he's, that helps. You win some games, you bring him back in. Maybe he gets back in the fold to give him a little more money. I'll take the Colts over the Ravens as the biggest upset from a macro standpoint.
I think Zach Moss made a good case for why Irsay may have fallen ass backwards.
30 carries, 122 yards.
So Jonathan Taylor is clearly a better football player, but price per carry may be something that continues to be a talking point.
And for the second straight upset, let me give my kicker shout out to Mr. Matthew Gay, who made NFL history with literally one of the best kicking performances in NFL history. He hit 4 field goals of 50 yards or more, which is the most kicks from that distance that any kicker has ever made. Justin Tucker has never made 4 50-yard field goals in a single game. Sebastian Janikowski, never done it. Matt Gay is the only person who has done it. And the crazy thing is, this is a guy the Colts gave a lot of money to during the offseason, and it really was an eyebrow-raising move. Because this is one of those things where you don't spend a lot of money on a kicker unless you think you're close to that's the thing that'll put you over the Super Bowl hump, where it felt like the Colts were so behind everything that they weren't going to be good this year, and now they are looking good. And I'm guessing the Rams are regretting letting this guy walk in free agency because Gay crushed it. And as I think you mentioned, Wilson, Justin Tucker did have a chance to win this game in regulation with a 61-yarder, but he fell about a yard short. So the fact that this was bad weather, we knew the tropical cyclone was going through, and although it wasn't pouring down rain, it was a wet field. It was a mushy field. It is not easy kicking weather, and for him to do this in that game and really win the game for the Colts was impressive.
Well, let me follow up on that. Mush, it's a turf field, so does mush come into play there?
Well, I mean, like the turf is still wet, so it's like
Okay.
and most of the field turf has the little kind of tracky, the
tire
the
things,
rubber pellets.
And by the way,
apropos of not nothing, but I felt like I did the thing with the two big TVs, the 4 multi-box things today on the YouTube TV, which is pretty cool.
YouTube
like
TV.
What's that?
No, you called it the YouTube TV.
Oh,
like
yeah. The YouTube TV,
like
they have these channels where it's like random, and they do it for college too. It's like random, and you could have like 4 games on one TV. I decided I basically had like a giant like vertical octo box going. I felt like it was almost like I want to do it in like one more week and see if it's almost like a little bit overwhelming. Like I need like 3 games on each TV, maybe. You know what I mean? Like
it's hard to watch 9 at once. I will say that.
It's hard to watch 8 games at once. Is what I'm getting
I
at.
do, and we don't have to get off of this. I do the Scott Hansen, and then
the red zone, and then
I just have two other games on. That way I can.
Yeah, I usually do that too. But I was like, I'm going to try these 2 multi boxes and see if it can work. And I felt like you could kind of like get lost in the sauce on some stuff.
I do red zone in 3 games.
By the way, Breech, you didn't mention this, and you might get your kicker badge revoked. Not only did Matt Gay kick 4 50-plus yarders, he striped 4. Like there was no question about any of them, despite
right down the middle, and they all made it by probably 5 to 7 yards, which from the distance he was kicking from, that weather was. They all would have been good from 60.
Yeah, that was an MVP performance, even by non-Breechian standards. All right, so I got some left. I got to go with the Texans over the Jaguars. Mostly 2 parts of this. Shout out to CJ Stroud. There was a conversation, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. Leading up to the draft, the Texans necessarily weren't sold on CJ at the number 2 pick, and then they did all that math. And Daniel Jeremiah actually predicted it in his last mock draft, I think, where they traded back up and got both CJ and Will Anderson, 2 guys they really liked. I'd heard that they were going to take Will at number 2. Will blocked a kick today, a field goal, and then CJ, as you see here in this graphic from our dude Harry here, most passing yards the first 3 career games ever. CJ Stroud at 906. So he balled out. Tank Dell, their draft pick, balled out at wide receiver. Will Anderson was making plays. Blake Cashman had the interception on a really poorly thrown ball from Trevor. They had some silly turnovers on the other side of the ball, despite the interception from Trevor Lawrence. And Brinson, I thought it was interesting that you mentioned the play calling. Look, man, we ain't talking about Matt Canada and Luke Getsy. We're talking about Doug Peterson, who reportedly, according to some Twitter reports, took over play calling at halftime. He was asked about it.
Well, Press Taylor's been calling plays.
Sort of gave a coy answer to it. So whether it's Press Taylor, who is Zach's brother, the coach for the Bengals, who a lot of people respect around
the league.
Are they
really brothers? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
A lot of people respect around the league.
Well, that says a lot. That
a lot of people
everything.
respect around the league, and they expect him to be a head coach at some point. Or whether it's Doug Peterson, who is the dude. So, I mean, there are no excuses about, blame the play calling. I mean, you can, but that's a huge problem, it feels like. So, Brinson, do you want to defend Doug and or Press and or Trevor Lawrence?
Well, I would say that if Doug took over at halftime, it is somewhat telling that the Jaguars didn't score in the first half and that they did score in the second half. Look, you give up 37 to CJ Stroud and the Texans, and you're going to have a bad time. Our 3rd largest road win in franchise history against the Jaguars, by the way. 2019, they won by 23, 2004 by 21, and then in 2012 and this year by 20. I mean, look, Tank Dell balling out. They didn't really run the ball extremely well. They just sort of took care of business. They had an 85-yard kickoff return by a big man, which we talked about, right, Ryan?
Andrew Beck, baby.
On our Nissan Play of the Game. And, they had that long pass from Stroud to Tank Dell, or long touchdown score. I mean, I think for me, if this is going to be a case where Doug Peterson calls I thought the offense looked much better in the second half. Now, granted, they're trailing by double digits. It's 17-7 when Tank Bigsby punches that touchdown in with 11-17 to go. I think I would want if the offense is going to be as lethargic as it was in parts of week 1, week 2, and then the first half of week 3, then I think it's time for Doug Peterson to take over and let Press Taylor do some other OC stuff, a la, like he can tell, he can call the play, he can tell Press what the plays are, and Press can call him into the quarterback or whatever the hell they want to do. But I mean, I think Doug Peterson needs to be calling the plays. If we saw what we can get for, like, you score 17 points in the second half, I mean, that's not, going to win you a game if you give up 37. But I think the larger point is the Jaguars defense is not good enough to just keep them in games single-handedly most of the time.
Well, I mean, they weren't playing the Dolphins. They were playing the Texans.
Well, they shut down the Chiefs last week, though.
Who did?
The Jaguars.
Oh, well, that's sort of the opposite of what you're saying, isn't it?
I'd say most of the time it's not going to keep them in games. Like, if you're giving up 37 to the Texans, you're going to need to be an explosive, high-powered offense. They have the weapons to be that offense. And so it's like, I mean, I don't know. Like, let Doug Peterson call plays moving forward, I think, is the answer.
Well, and because you guys mentioned that, I will throw out real quick. Trevor Lawrence in the first half, 10 of 16 for 89 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Second half, 17 of 24 for 190 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. But as Brinson pointed out, they were trailing, so they were kind of in a position where they had to throw the ball more. I don't know that he was that much more efficient in the second half. And real quick, again, special teams, such a huge part of this game, just like all the upsets we talked about. You guys mentioned the kickoff return for a touchdown. You guys mentioned the blocked field goal, which, by the way, after the blocked field goal, the Texans got the ball 41 yards away from the end zone and scored a touchdown. So they used that short field to get a touchdown. And then let's not forget that early in the game, the Jags could have scored the first points, but their new kicker, Brandon McManus, missed from 48. So Jacksonville
blocked, I think, right?
No, the first one was a miss. The second one was blocked.
Okay.
So Jacksonville had a total special teams meltdown in this loss.
Can't win without special teams, Breech.
Anyways, hey, smash the like button, people. If you're in the chat, if you're listening to the show on YouTube, the ratio of people watching to likes is not proportionate. So smash that like button. Throw Ryan Wilson a bone. He's being judged for this.
I think we put it on Twitter one day and say, if this gets 5,000 likes, Brinson will shave his beard.
That's a good one.
That's
5,000 likes,
and we'll advertise it all week.
I don't think I'm gonna. If I'm shaving my beard, it's probably not gonna be in the fall or the winter because like it's just a lot harder to get sun on it. Like it would need to be like summer, so because it's gonna be.
No, it needs to be December because then everything will be the same color.
Breech makes a good point. All right, moving on. Let's
Summer,
do
you have the farmer's tan.
I'm more tan than it looks right now. It's just the lights are very bright. Like, if I lean back like this, it's a lot more.
there. That's better.
I mean, Breech, you look like you're wearing like a heavy layer of like some kind of makeup.
Well, that's my kid put it. No, I'm just kidding. I was outside you have a toddler just outside all the time
You are outside a lot.
at the playground.
All right, let's keep talking about the quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence in particular. And Brinson, I'll come to you. Which young quarterback had the craptastiest day? I think I just made that word up. Trevor Lawrence, we just talked about him. Sam Howell, who was sacked 9 times and threw 4 interceptions in a game that he doesn't have to worry about forgetting because I'm pretty sure he lost his memory the way he was being treated by that defense. They went after him. Or Justin Fields, who has been living one long nightmare for his duration in Chicago. His teammates and his coaches refused to help him, and it was a particularly long day in Kansas City. He finished 11 of 22 for 99 yards. Teammates dropping passes, questionable play calls, the same old there. For me, I think it's probably Trevor Lawrence, not based solely on the numbers.
You hate Trevor Lawrence, though.
But I think the issue with Sam Howell is like 9 sacks. That can't all be on you. So, Brinson, who are you going with?
I'm going to say Sam Howell because
right back at you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that you can make the case for all these guys. You could say Trevor Lawrence because he, like the Jaguars are supposed to beat the Texans. Like Pete Prisco said that he thinks they could be the 1 seed in the AFC, and based on the fact they were going to play all these different rookie quarterbacks, well, you barely beat Anthony Richardson and you just lost to CJ Stroud. So that's a problem. And Lawrence was not good. You were a huge favorite in this game. Fields has been bad all year long. On the other hand, like, was Justin Fields' performance even the third worst thing about the Bears week?
No,
probably not. And you're going against the Chiefs, And you're Chicago, and Chicago drafted Mitchell Trubisky over Patrick Mahomes. I could have told you Mahomes was going to have a revenge game in that spot. So I'll go to a different revenge game. Sean McDermott against his old boss, Ron Rivera. Didn't even fire him, but just show him. I can see William and Mary guys are spiteful, even like in unnecessary spots. And so I could see Sean McDermott somehow like wanting revenge, wanting to show up Ron Rivera. And Sam Howell, 4 picks, 9 sacks, 9 times. The sacks aren't great, but sacks are a quarterback stat to a degree too. You're holding the ball too long, you're getting pressured. Sure. The biggest problem for me with the Sam Howell thing is, and like I'm a big Sam Howell guy, and I think he'll get better throughout the year. Buffalo was a really tough test, but you have now, by doing this at home in front of new owner Josh Harris, really put a target on Ron Rivera's back. The Commanders are 2-1, which is nice, but we sort of think that maybe it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. And if Howell, which by the way, this headshot just ridiculous, like you can tell he went to UNC. If he keeps playing like this, if he plays like this at all, and Ron Rivera's entire premise of this season was trotting out 5th rounder Sam Howell, who could put up a 41.5 passer rating and throw 4 interceptions in a single game, Ron Rivera is putting himself squarely on the hot seat. And so because of that, I will say that Sam Howell had the worst performance because it jeopardizes way more jobs than the other 2 guys.
Breech, let me say this quickly, just to touch you up. So highest expectations for Trevor Lawrence, I would imagine, coming into the season. And then Sam Howell, who knows, Justin Fields feels like he's on his way out the door. So do you agree with Brinson?
Well, I feel most sorry for Justin Fields because
I agree with that.
Imagine playing in front of Taylor Swift and only throwing for 99 yards.
It is.
That's embarrassing. I wouldn't even be able to show my face in public for a week. But like we all said, there was
you just have to shake it off and like get back on the horse. I mean, that's all you gotta do.
Brinson.
Please don't laugh.
But look, there were 0 expectations for Justin Fields. No one thought the Bears were going to win that game. So he played exactly how everyone thought he was going to play. There's no disappointment there. Trevor Lawrence is interesting, but I just feel like the Texans are his kryptonite. He cannot beat the Texans. It's like Joe Burrow versus the Browns. Trevor Lawrence 1-4 against the Texans in his career. He was favored. Jacksonville was favored in all 4 games that he lost to them. He is the only starting quarterback since 1970 who has 4 or more losses to a team that he was favored to beat in his first 3 seasons. So that is a little bit crazy. So I'm also going to go with Sam Howell. I'm going to agree with Brinson here. And I think my thing with Sam Howell is that, look, he looked good the first 2 weeks. He threw 2 touchdown passes last week against the Broncos, that wild comeback win. They had the win over the Cardinals that looks a little bit more impressive now. And he looked pretty good there, even though, these 9 sacks, maybe we should have seen it coming because he got sacked 6 times by the Cardinals. He got sacked 4 times by the Broncos. He had been sacked 10 times going into this game. And so, yes, he sacked 9 times, but you cannot throw 4 interceptions. You're taking 9 sacks is one thing. You can't also throw the picks, so including a pick 6. So this is one of those where Washington's like, "Ooh, we have a quarterback," and now you got to take 5 steps back and start wondering if you have a quarterback again. And now Sam Howell has to start taking these baby steps forward. You're doing it at home, and you got Magic Johnson watching, and he's thinking, "Man, what are we doing here? Do we need a quarterback?" So Sam Howell can't have another one of these games because the Commanders are giving him the season to figure out if he's their guy. And if you're laying eggs like this, you're not their guy.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think Jacoby Brissett's in the wings, and he's reliable. And Sam Howell feels like he would be less inclined to bounce back in a way that Trevor Lawrence would, because we've seen Trevor Lawrence have to do it under some pretty dire circumstances with the previous head coach, no doubt about it. All right. Let's talk about another quarterback who gets the franchise nod and sometimes doesn't play like a franchise quarterback. And Breech, I'll come to you because Trevon Diggs is out with the ACL for the year. He was one of the best players on that defense. It starts with Micah Parsons, of course. Dak Prescott, for the first 2 weeks of the season, wasn't really asked to do much. The defense sort of did the heavy lifting. And you might say, well, the defense didn't hold a percent of the bargain against Josh Dobbs, but you can't say that without laughing. Terrible interception at the end of the game. And I went back and looked. That last drive, it was 28-16, Arizona scored. And our guy Mike McCarthy follows us up. They get the ball at 7:22, and they run a 14-play drive that ends in that interception. Use up 4.5 minutes. 8 of those plays are run plays, and there is no urgency. And I'm sort of confused by that. But are you putting this on Dak? Is it Mike McCarthy being without Kellen Moore? Is it something else? Is it the injuries? Are you concerned about the Cowboys? Because this feels like the Cowboys charging in a Cowboys way.
It absolutely does. It is the old Breech bot fell for it, kind of like last year that we always talk about. And the thing was, I was on a radio show earlier going into this week and saying, man, Mike McCarthy's so underrated. He's won 12 games each of the past 2 seasons. He is 2-0 now. This team finally looks good, and they're on pace to meet up in an undefeated matchup with the 49ers in week 5. And man, I should just rip my tongue out because I have no idea what I'm talking about. I must have jinxed the Cowboys. So you're talking about this is a game where they just got outclassed, and I'm going to put it on Mike McCarthy. I know that there's a few other options, and I could have gone another route, but I think, Wilson, you start to hit the nail on the head there. These play calls just don't make any sense. You're down multiple scores. You can't just be running the clock out. Why are you trying to run the clock out? You're losing. You're not up 2 scores, Mike. You are down 2 scores. And then the other part of this is that they got the red zone 5 times against the Cardinals, which that's a good number to get red zone 5 times. They scored 1 touchdown. So there were 4 times they did not score a touchdown. If you have a bad red zone offense, I put that more on the coaching than anything else. Was Dak great? No, Dak Prescott was not great. But this was a classic Mike McCarthy. We saw these types of games at the end of his Green Bay tenure a lot, and everyone would just stick their hands up and be like, when are we getting rid of this guy? And obviously the Cowboys aren't there yet, and Jerry Jones just gave him a vote of confidence, which is probably horrible because he was talking last week about how good of a coach Mike is. Just as I was. So, yeah, I'm going to put this on McCarthy for bad play calling, bad red zone play calling. Just hopefully it's a mulligan. I don't know what's going on here.
I think the other thing, too, the other reason you can put it on Mike McCarthy is the Cowboys sleepwalked into this game. Like, they rolled out of bed and trotted down to State Farm Arena or whatever it is, and we're like, all right. I mean, we're 12.5-point road favorites against this trash Cardinals team, even though they're being coached by one of the defensive coordinators who's been in that division for several years and knows what Mike McCarthy likes to do. Kellen Moore have been calling plays, but still, you've seen this personnel plenty of times. You're missing Zach Wilson, Zach Martin, and who else was ruled out right at the? It was kind of a.
They're missing 2 offensive linemen.
Yeah, 2 starting offensive linemen. It was sort of a surprise, like they're going to be missing 2 offensive linemen. That is concerning. But man, I don't know. I put it on. I put some of it on Dan Quinn and the defense too. And look, last week, the last 2 weeks, Dan Quinn's going to have his pick and litter when it comes to whatever job he wants. And Mike McCarthy's really coaching this team well. Micah Parsons, Jim Nantz was on CBS this morning and called him like a Lawrence Taylor player. Jerry Jones said the same thing, right? We've heard, we were praising, we put Micah Parsons. We did a ranking show with Prisco and had Micah Parsons in our top 5 non-quarterback MVPs, and said he would probably be in there even if you included quarterbacks. So it's like all of this hype for the Cowboys after 2 weeks of just running a cement truck over the Jets and the Giants, and we're like, well, the Cowboys, they are here. And maybe we were a bit premature because the Arizona Cardinals, that's about as easy a start as you can get if you're an NFL team. Giants, Rodgers-less Jets, and the Josh Dobbs-led Cardinals. And so 2-1's fine, but that game was you could put it on the defense for not being prepared. You put it on Mike McCarthy for not. They didn't come in ready to win that game. They came in and looked sloppy, looked lazy, and the Cardinals took it to them and outcoached them. So I put that on the coaching staff for sure.
I just want to go on record as saying I was never on the Cowboys this year. I just don't trust Mike McCarthy, and Dak Prescott makes me very nervous. I mean, they can turn it around.
One game, you jump off the bandwagon, Ryan.
By the way, if the Bucks, if the Eagles go down to Tampa on Monday night and lose to Baker Mayfield and the Bucks, what an unbelievable weekend that will be for the NFC East. After everybody's like, 3 of the 4 teams are undefeated in the NFC East. You start the weekend with you start Thursday with the Giants getting slaughtered by the Niners. Then you have the Commanders with the Bills. The Cowboys get blown up by the Cardinals. If the Eagles lose, that's an all-time weekend for the NFC least.
The Bucks are the only team in the NFL without a turnover.
Ooh,
put that in your pipe.
By the way, this is sort of a callback to the beginning of the show, but I sort of remembered it and I just wanted to point it out. The Dolphins didn't have a first-round pick this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know whose fault that was? Sean Payton's. Because remember they lost the first round pick for the Sean Payton Sean Payton Tom Brady tampering stuff.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, Mike McDaniel lost a first round pick for something he had nothing to do with, and he got to play the guy who caused it today. And
Sean Payton playing the long game. They'd have lost by 100 if he didn't do that. So shout out to Sean Payton for thinking ahead. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about which 2-1 team we think is going to be terrible down the stretch.
Are you guys ready to win some money?
It's never been more fun to win.
$1 million!
Loteria Loca. Series premiere Monday, October 2nd on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Loteria Loca. That's John Breech. If you're listening to the audio version, Paramount+. Check it out. All right, Breech. There are a lot of teams that are 2-1. There are a lot of teams that are 1-2. Let's start with the good. Let's be positive. So, one team each. Just give me your one word or two word answer if you want to give their full name, if their Christian name, of which 2-1 team you feel good about, and then we'll circle back and sort through it. So, Breech, which 2-1 team do you feel good about in terms of them making some waves, being in the thing for the long haul, and making their way to the playoffs?
Well, I'm going to take the easy way out, and I'm going to break your rules because it's actually a 3-word answer. The Kansas City Chiefs.
Brinson, who you got? 2-1 team that you are all in on.
You picked the Chiefs?
Yeah, why not?
Wow.
I went out on a limb, Brinson. Some people aren't as bold as me. Sorry. I bet you're going to. I'm going to be bold here.
I didn't even consider the Chiefs because that's just.
Well, you can tell us your answer. That's the whole point of this. What do you got?
Maybe I'll get to it in a second. I just didn't consider the Chiefs were even like on the table because they're the freaking Chiefs. They're the freaking Super Bowl champion.
I'll take the only rule of this exercise had to be 2-1.
2-1. You can say what you want to say.
It's fair. I guess actually, ironically, I'm going to select the team that caused the Chiefs to be 2-1, the Detroit Lions, because they beat the Chiefs in Week 1.
Hold on. We're going to go around and then we're going to circle back. So we got the Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Detroit Lions, which is actually a thoughtful pick, Breech. And I'm going to get even more thoughtfuler. Make up a word here. I'm going with another 3-worder, Green Bay Packers.
What? You guys can't both be right.
All right, Breech, you get like 15 to 20 seconds to explain the Chiefs because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You can talk about any potential hiccups. I don't know what they would be outside of an asteroid strike.
Yeah, there's no hiccups. This team, all they had to do.
Fair enough.
They're going to make as long as Patrick Mahomes stays healthy. We saw his ankle get banged up. Which obviously isn't good, but you know what? He didn't have to play the entire game because
he didn't even get asked about his ankle. He got asked about Taylor Swift.
And you look at the Chiefs, their schedule, they don't play a team with a winning record until November, but that game is against the Dolphins and it's in Germany. Pick 6 in Germany for that game. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I wonder how Tua will do in Germany. All right, well, that was an easy one. Brinson, you can give a more passionate defense for the Detroit Lions who had a little bounce back. Not a whooping, but pretty close to whooping.
Yeah, I really took it as like a 2-1 team we feel good about. I mean, Breech did the right thing. They say, I'll take the Chiefs. I sort of took it as like we are like team that got back to 2-1 that we're now, sort of like, okay, I feel pretty good about it. Not a team that blew out the Bears and like sauntered to 2-1. Can we talk briefly about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, by the way?
I'd prefer not to, but if you want to go for 30 seconds, you certainly can.
God, you're such.
I mean, everyone's talked about what is there to say about Taylor Swift? What do you want to say?
I mean, I just think it's insane that like Travis Kelce went to a concert at Arrowhead Stadium and brought this bracelet with his phone number on it, like the Taylor Swift friendship bracelets to try and, you know what I'm talking about, right?
I can
Brenton,
envision.
if you're trying to say he has more game than you, we already know that. You don't have to give deep.
I think there's a Taylor Swift bracelet like up. Anyway, the point being is that like he went and then it was like reportedly struck out, and then these rumors started bubbling up that they were kind of seeing each other, and then she came to the game. Taylor Swift's probably the most famous person on planet Earth right now. Is there somebody more famous than Taylor Swift right now?
Well, to Breech's point, you don't want to be Justin Fields and throw for 99 yards. So
exactly. I'm just saying Taylor Swift was in the Kelce's luxury box at the Chiefs game in Arrowhead Stadium, sitting with Travis Kelce's mother, hanging out with him. Like they're straight up dating. This is going to be like, if you think this isn't going to be a thing every week, it is. Like the cameras cut to her like 12 times on the Fox broadcast. Every time there's a score or like something weird happened, they would pan up to Taylor Swift. This was like all anybody was talking about on social media was Taylor Swift. Patrick Mahomes wasn't asked about his ankle injury or beating the brakes off the Bears. He was asked about Taylor Swift. Like this is going, if Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce date through February, it's going to be a thing. Like it's just,
to Brinson's point, I saw a couple of people make the same joke on Twitter that there's really no good end game here for Kelce as far as if you break up, you end up as the bad guy in Taylor Swift's song. If the Chiefs start to struggle at all, Taylor Swift is a distraction and you're messing up the chemistry. And the only way this ends well is if they somehow get married. But then this whole thing would become a circle because all anyone's going to talk about is
or you win the Super Bowl and then like you break up in the offseason and then you lose the Super Bowl and it's like you got to get back together with her.
Yep.
Wilson, I mean you can't I'm sorry, look, you can't be the leader.
What's the reason?
You can't be the leader of this podcast and just have no interest in talking about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce when it was like the biggest story in the afternoon games on Sunday.
I thought the Cardinals Dallas game was the biggest story in the 4 p.m. window.
Breech, tell him that the Taylor Swift was easily the most talked about story.
oh my God.
Here's how we'll know, and then we'll move on. Breech, did you write a story about Taylor Swift today for CBSSports.com?
I did not.
That is not the biggest.
We have a Taylor Swift beat writer though, so that's not on me.
Somebody else beat him to it while he's writing a Scoregami article about the Dolphins. And by the way, also making matters worse, Taylor Swift is an actual Eagles fan. She writes about she's written songs about talked about the Eagles in her songs. So now she's dating the tight end of the team that beat her favorite team. Like, think about how Philly fans feel.
Yeah, I mean, Brady Quinn's sister's married to AJ Hawk. They worked it out. It's fine. Notre Dame and Ohio State. All right. My favorite team, the Green Bay Packers, 2-1. We'll talk about that in a second because Jordan Love is my new favorite Taylor Swift like crush. But quickly, let's go through these 1 and 2 team that you feel good about, Breech. And it can't be the Chiefs, thank goodness.
It is not the Chiefs, even though I wrote them down. I found out they're not 1 and 2, so I can't name them. My 1 and 2 team I feel good about is the New England Patriots.
Ooh, I love it. What do you got? We'll
no, that's it. It's the Patriots.
Oh, okay.
Wait, do you? By the way, the Lions. I just think
you used your time on Taylor Swift.
I'm talking about football too. The Lions righted the ship in a big way, took care of business at home against the Falcons. I was worried after the Lions beat the Chiefs. How do they respond against the Seahawks and the Falcons, two potential NFC contenders, along with the Lions? How do they respond? And the Seahawks game was so concerning, and then they just took care of business in a kind of a quiet way against Atlanta. I thought it was a huge bounce back for the Lions, who I think we can safely say should be the favorites in that division now.
All right, who's your 1 and 2 team? Do you feel good about?
The 1 and 2 team that I feel good about.
Who?
I will take the who'd you take, Breech? The Patriots?
Yes. You cannot take the Patriots. They're taken.
I don't want to take the Patriots.
Good.
I was debating between Chargers and Jaguars. I think that the Chargers, I'll say the Chargers because
that's off script for you.
Yeah,
Wait, you're debating between those two teams. You're going to take the team that blew a 27-0 lead to the other team you were going to pick.
Well, I want to talk about the. Well, I mean, are we going to talk about the? Are we going to talk about the Chargers and Vikings in a minute? Anyway, all right. Then I'll take the Jaguars since we already talked about them. Doug Peterson taking hold of the controls on the offense. You still have Trevor Lawrence. You still have plenty of weapons. You can figure this thing out. Really bad loss, but you're in a division where 1 and 2 doesn't kill you in terms of being able to make a deep run. And they got to 3-7 last year and still made the playoffs. So I'm not pushing the panic button on the Jaguars right now.
Got him because I'm taking the Chargers. The old switcheroo. You fell for it. I'm all in on the Chargers until they take Brandon Staley and fire him into the sun. Until that moment, they're my team. All right, so Breech. We're going to do the bad side of this, and we'll just go through the team so we can keep this thing going here. 2-1 team you think still stinks, and a 1 and 2 team that you're convinced they're worse than ever.
Well, I don't even need to talk about them because we already did. It's the Washington Commanders.
All right. What about 1 and 2? You have a 1 and 2 entry?
The 1 and 2 team that their season's already over is the New York Football Jets.
Oh, the Jets. Okay. Brinson?
I'll stay in New York with my 1 and 2 team and say the Giants.
I was going to say that could have gone either way.
Yeah, but I think the Titans would also qualify too. Just you're like, oh man, it's still a bad division. The Giants, man, in that division, it just can't, I don't think you can feel good about the direction the Giants are headed. And then Ian in the chat called me out for this, but you know what? I will stay on brand. And the 2-1 team I don't feel good about is the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
They lose that game to the Packers today.
They lose Derek Carr for some time. It may be. We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, it's his AC joint, which it felt like the report that came out was like, who knows how long it's going to be. But I feel like an AC joint is usually like a couple of weeks, right?
Jameis didn't play poorly, but I mean, that team was up 17-0. So
I just don't. There's nothing. They haven't been good on offense in any of even with Derek Carr in there in the 3 weeks we've seen him play, and the defense has been good. But have they played anybody good? Titans, Panthers, and Packers. Like I feel like the Saints get a hold of something like a good team, and they get their doors blown off.
Good thing they didn't face Andy Dalton. Am I right, Breech? All right, I'm going to go with the Saints were on my list too, as was Washington. But I'm going to go with the hometown Steelers. I'm not buying that Matt Canada nonsense. Big deal. You beat the team that's in the 1 and 2 list for me, the Raiders. Hooray! You're good at beating terrible football teams on national television.
So wait, the Steelers and the Raiders are your two teams?
Yeah. All right. But the team that I mentioned that I'm in love with at 201, Breech and Brinson, are my Green Bay Packers. So I watched that we had the Jordan Love game here locally, so I watched that on one of the my little 8-inch televisions from back in the day. That guy is dealing, and they were getting their asses handed to him, and it had nothing to do with Jordan Love. Jaden Reed, the second-round pick out of Michigan State, dropped about 15 balls. So he made a great catch towards the end there. They were without some of their key players. Christian Watson still wasn't there. Aaron Jones didn't play. David Bakhtiari didn't play. It didn't matter. It feels like, I wonder if Matt LaFleur, in his heart of hearts, wonders or even hopes that he had gone to Jordan Love last year. Not that he was better than Aaron Rodgers, but you get a year into the system, so on and so forth. But at no point did Jordan Love look upset. He forced an interception in the third quarter when they were down 17-0. But after that, and before that, he was absolutely dealing. It certainly helped that Derek Carr went out. So I'll ask you, Brinson. Jordan Love's I won't even ask you, I'll tell you. Jordan Love is going to be the Packers' long-term quarterback, no doubt about it. How far can this team go? Because it feels like that division is wide open.
Yeah, definitely is. I mean, the Vikings aren't very good. The Bears are absolutely terrible.
Oh, boy.
And I think it's the Lions and the Packers, right? I mean, it's going to come down, might even come down to like week 18 and we get Lions and Packers on Sunday Night Football again, except this time without Aaron Rodgers. I don't even know if they play in week 18. Don't quote me on that. But you get the point.
I will.
Yeah, I let me ask you this, because I was texting with some friends about this. Are Packers fans the most spoiled quarterback fans of all time? Like the luckiest quarterback fans of all time? The only pushback I had was maybe you say the Patriots.
The Colts.
Colts I threw out too. But I mean, like, dude, if Jordan Love is a legit quarterback, like, I mean, you have a pretty good chance of having as much success with Jordan Love the way he's looked as you did with Andrew Luck in the Colts. Like, Luck didn't really win anything. Peyton Manning won one Super Bowl, and you got Favre, Rodgers, and then like, what if Jordan Love is awesome?
He looks to be awesome, and I think there's something to be said. Breech, tell me what you think like this. There's something to be said for having a quarterback sit for 2 or 3 or 4 years. He had that redone deal because his contract was going to be up, his rookie deal, but that's just not the world we live in. But where are you on Jordan Love? The Jordan Love fest, especially as it relates to winning that division?
For me, he's Jordan-like. I like him.
Really?
I don't love him just yet. I need to see a little bit more. I mean, first half, he went 7 of 17. I know there's a couple drops in there, but when you are a substantial number under 50%, you're just – they were all over the place. And for me, it really felt like the Packers didn't win this game until Derek Carr got injured, and the Saints just looked completely deflated on offense, even though Jameis Winston wasn't horrible. And you mentioned that interception. He had a rough first half, 7 of 17, came out and threw an interception on the first possession of the second half when it was 17-0. They got the ball back after the defense made a stop. Then they promptly went 3 and out. So we're talking about really 2 possessions of the second half where it's just like, there's no way they're going to win this game. And then they got the ball again and drove down, probably should kick a field goal, but went forward, called for them to go for it, which that is what it is. I thought it was a weird call. Just take the points. You're down 3 scores. You get a field goal. You cut it to 2 scores. And they only won because the Saints decided to get a kicker who can't make a 46-yard field goal.
Yeah, they traded the other one that could.
Yes, they did.
The team that got beat by 50 points.
And the kicker who got traded, Will Lutz, But he won the training camp battle, and his agent literally said training camp battle wasn't even close. The Saints are being cheap, and this is going to backfire.
Didn't Lutz cost the Broncos a game in the week? Didn't he cost them the week 1 game?
Oh, well, Lutz hasn't been kicking great in the regular season, but the fact that they said that the Saints would regret this decision, here we are in week 3, where the Saints might be regretting that decision. So I thought the Saints more lost this with the Derek Carr injury than the Packers did win it. So, I mean, great that they came back from 17-0, but I didn't come out of this game thinking, man, Jordan Love is going to be there for 18 years like Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. I came out of this game thinking,
win one Super Bowl, but yet somehow massively disappoint the fan base?
Yes.
Hey, let me make sure I heard you right, Breech. Were you confused or about the going for 2 after they scored the first touchdown down 14? Is that what you just said?
No, they went for it on 4th down on the first play of the 4th quarter.
Oh, okay.
They were down 17-0. They could have kicked a 31-yard field goal.
Oh, gotcha.
That would have cut it to 17-3, and in that case, they would have been down 2. You're down 3 scores. You have to have 3 scores.
Right.
So if you kick the field goal, you're now down 2 scores in the 4th quarter, rather than still being down 3 scores, which they were because they failed on Jordan Love.
It's a 30-yard field goal too.
Right. Okay. Good. So I wanted to bring up the other point, and then we'll move on. But a lot of people someone asked me last week, I think, why do you go for 2 when you're down 14? You score a touchdown, you're down 6, and then you go for 2. Why do you go for 2 the first time? Well, this is why, because they went for 2, and they were down. What were they down? Were they down 14?
They were down 17 to 3.
Yep.
Because they kicked a field goal. So when you're down 14 in the 4th quarter, analytics say you go for 2 after scoring the first one, and I believe the logic is that you have
another chance to do it.
What's that?
You have another chance to do it if you don't get it.
No. The logic is that the percent chance of converting a 2-point conversion is higher than your odds of winning a coin toss.
Interesting. Anyway, they did it. They pulled it off, and it was sort of fun to watch happen in real time. So, to Breech's point, LaFleur should have not gone for it on 4th down earlier. He did the analytics math thing, pulled a Mike McD later, and Derek Carr got hurt, and they won. So,
well, and people are saying they don't like the math, but like if you're down 14,
I don't like math either.
Well, I think it gives you more mathematical outs. And also the worst case scenario is that if you don't get it, you're still only down 1 score.
Well, there's a couple of things. One, if you get the touchdown to the 2-point conversion, you're now down 6. A touchdown plus an extra point wins the game for you, in theory. You can tie the game with 2 field goals. And, there's a decent chance you'll have multiple possessions. The Saints actually, the Packers ended up having 2 possessions, got it back with a minute to go off that missed field goal. So they would have had a chance to go and win the game. And then additionally, if you miss the 2-point conversion, you're still only down 1 possession because you're down 8. So you have to go get a touchdown and a 2-point conversion as well. But the made 2-point conversion increases your win probability more than it would if you just go to overtime and have a coin flip. You see what I'm saying? So like that's the math and the logic behind that, all the reasoning behind that.
All right, 1-word answer. Who wins the NFC North?
Lions.
Breech?
Detroit. Rock City.
I love the Lions. But
It's 3 words, by the way. Why don't you chastise Breech for being too long?
I know. I love the Lions.
I go 3 words over. Brinson goes 30 minutes over.
I know. I love the Lions.
I feel like I'm being pretty contained and succinct with my answers.
Brinson's like a zoo animal right now.
You should sit over here.
Well, hey, one more thing. I mean, like half of us I'm trolling you because when I would host,
you're not trolling me. I mean,
you'd be like one more thing about that, and then everyone would be like, Brinson, you're letting the show go too long. Hey, do you watch Suits on Netflix? What do you think about Suits?
So I love Detroit.
I thought he was going to say Suits.
I
love Suits.
And I love Jordan Love. So
Suits is really good.
I will answer that later. All right, let's talk about.
Wait, who do you think is going to win the North?
I'll say the Packers, just to mix it up. All right, let's talk about a team that we talked about tangentially earlier because they were responsible for sacking Sam Howell 9 times. But on the other side of the ball, Josh Allen, who had his own Sam Howell type of afternoon in week 1 when he had 4 turnovers, looks to be Josh Allen again. He's playing within the confines of the offense. He's running the plays that are called. He's not scrambling on every opportunity and taking stupid hits. He's letting James cook. He's letting Stephon Diggs cook and let the defense do the rest. So, Brinson, Josh Allen's back, right?
Yeah, Josh Allen never left. By the way, Lions minus 105, Packers plus 155 to win the division at DraftKings for those interested. So still Lions favorite, but pretty close.
Hey, and they play this Thursday, so I'm sure those odds will change by Thursday night.
That's right.
Can't wait.
Those odds will change after Thursday night, one way or another. Allen never left. I think Breech mentioned that Houston
Allen did leave on the first week one. He was not there.
Breech mentioned that Houston is Trevor Lawrence's kryptonite. I think Robert Saleh and the Jets are just Josh Allen's kryptonite.
Okay.
That defense, for whatever reason, just messes him up. He said same bleep, different day, was really mad about it. And the last 2 weeks, the Bills have come out. I almost think like that loss to the Jets, like, you're so amped up. It's September 11th. It is the Monday Night Football, the Jet in New Jersey, right? Against the New York team. Aaron Rodgers' debut. He comes out with the American flag. The Monday Night Football. Just a massive, massive game. And you lay this egg, and you feel like you got sort of like not taunted, but sort of like dragged into laying this egg by this defense that is being so smart about how they play against you, and you're so aggressive and pushing the ball down the field. And then you see Josh Allen the last 2 weeks against the Raiders and then against Washington, and they ran the ball really well. He's 20 of 32, 218, a touchdown, interception. Also had a touchdown running the ball, 3 carries for 46 yards, and that score. Like, this was a lot about the defense for the Bills. The last 2 weeks for the Bills, they have looked like, and granted, they're playing the Raiders and they're playing the Commanders, but they have looked like a very balanced football, a very balanced, composed, high-end football team, which is what we thought they were supposed to be. Now, I think that the ending of last year, where they looked so, they had the DeMar Hamlin stuff, but then they looked so bad against the Bengals in the playoffs. Just like, it was just a smack in the face by Cincinnati there. Then you have all this offseason drama. And everybody was off the Bills coming into the season. Like, people were very down on the Bills. And I think that Jets game, that loss to the Jets without Aaron Rodgers, served to really confirm some priors for people that didn't like the Bills. Well, I was very high on the Bills. I picked them to win the Super Bowl over the Niners this year. And I think that the last 2 weeks, this has been the Bills team that we're going to see this year. Sort of a quiet, motivated, chip on the shoulder. Let's go out there and take care of our business team. They got overamped in week one. I think it's an aberration. And I think the Bills are going to be a very, very good football team. Bills Dolphins is going to be a slugfest for this division, in my opinion.
Hey, Breech, rank the teams in the AFC, and then you can give us your Bills take.
And the entire AFC?
All 16 teams. You can do the top 3 or wherever the Bills come in, and you can stop there if you want.
You want to know where the Bills come in the AFC? I think that you probably have.
I've already ranked these earlier with Pete and JB, so I can tell you it's Dolphins, Chiefs, Bills right now.
You ranking for Breech? There you go, Breech.
What about the Ravens?
They just lost to the Colts, so no.
Yeah, and the Chiefs lost to the Lions, and the
In
Bills
week
lost
one.
to the Jets.
Oh.
Well, by all means, rank the Ravens ahead of the Bills.
Maybe I will.
Well, if you would hurry up and rank, it'd be great.
I would say Dolphins, Chiefs, Bills.
So exactly what I said.
No, exactly what I just said.
All right, go ahead. What do you go with Josh Allen?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll say about Allen is that I feel like the Bills sat him down and somebody said, "Look, Josh, don't be dumb, and we can win the Super Bowl." And that's it. Just is that simple.
Yeah,
just
that is pretty simple.
You don't have to be Mr. Put the team on your back and make crazy throws. You saw what happened against the Jets. That's not going to help us at all. You mentioned it, Wilson. Play within the confines of this offense. Make a play when you have to. Make a play when you need to. But we don't need you to make a play on every single down. And, we saw Stephon Diggs somehow running wide open the whole game. It's like the Commanders forgot he existed. But Allen found him, and that's what good quarterbacks do. They find their best players. And the most interesting thing, though, is that not only have the Bills won the past 2 weeks, they've won these games by at least 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And fun fact, they're the first team since 2002 to lose in week 1 and then win their next 2 games by 28 points or more.
Ooh, that is a fun fact. By the way, the Commanders got their 3 points. 37-3 was the final, with 46 seconds left in the game on a 51-yard field goal, which is one of those, like, I just need someone not to look at this.
No, that's running on a perfect game, man. Like, you don't kick a field goal with 46 seconds left when you're being shut out. Take the shutout like a man.
Ron
Well, that's what I'm
Rivera
saying.
does.
No, but remember, like Bruce Arians did this like against the Bears a few years ago. Where it's like he's like, I'm kicking this 60-yard drive. He's like, it's like, dude, you have to go for it on fourth down here. Like, what are you doing? He's like, no, I'm getting the points because I don't want that zero in the column. I think too, very very quickly, just to add on the Josh Allen stuff in the confines of the offense. Patrick Mahomes we talked about this at length this offseason, how he changed the way he played football because teams and Joe Burrow too, like teams started playing these two highs on the back end, taking away the deep ball, forcing quarterbacks to be conservative because they don't want to get torched by these massive plays from these big-armed, aggressive quarterbacks. And Josh Allen, that's just part of his maturation, is figuring out how to do that as well. And I think, granted, easier against these defenses, but the Commanders have been good. He's done a much better job of that the last 2 weeks after a disastrous week 1.
All right. We're going to take a quick break and come back. We're going to talk about how the Vikings out-Chargers the Chargers when it comes to chargering right after this.
Don't get a try run, we only get one life. So enjoy the ride. Just live your life, one day at a time. Enjoy the ride.
I know we're not supposed to break the third wall here, but did that say Greensboro?
I don't know. I wasn't looking. What was it ad for?
I think it's the PBR, professional bull riding. I think, or CBR maybe. It looks like it's in Greensboro. Might have to go check that out.
Yeah, go check that out. You got the cowboy hat and the sunglasses.
I've been to one
prime
before.
time.
Really?
Yeah, Breech dressed up as the back end of the bull. Hey,
I was the clown.
I
missed that.
No, I'm just kidding. I was the clown.
All right, let's talk about my guy Brandon Staley. And Breech, tell me what you would do in this situation. Let's say you're winning 28-24. It's 4th and 1 from your own 24-yard line. There's 1:46 left to go in the game. You can punt. You can kick a field goal. You can run out of the back of the end zone, or you can go for it with a super crappy running game. What are you going to do?
Okay, you can't kick field goal. I was just kidding because you're at your own 24-yard line, and you are obviously mentioning, I will set the stage, 4th and 1 from your own 24, 1 minute and 51 seconds left, and you are up by 4 points. If you fail, if you do not get this, the Vikings have the ball 24 yards from your end zone with a chance to take the lead. But if you get this, the game is effectively over.
No, it's over. They have no timeouts left.
Yes, so it's effectively over. You still have to kneel it 3 times. You can fumble.
It's the Chargers.
Snaps. We saw a miracle in the Meadowlands when snap got fumbled. It's happened. So not 100% over, 99.9999, Brinson. But last week against the Titans, we were talking about how it's like Staley's lost his mojo. He's got this identity crisis. He doesn't know what to do on 4th down anymore. He's outthinking himself because he went for it all the time his first year. Then he got criticized the second year because he was losing games. You missed the playoffs because you lose that game to the Raiders by going for it in your own territory. This exact situation and failing. And he had a call he probably should have gone for it last week and didn't. And then this week, I'm probably punting the ball here. And then he fails, and it doesn't even blow up in his face because they end up winning. So if they lose, I swear Dean Spanos might have walked on the field and fired him on the spot.
He would have been fired. So let me set the stage even further because I went and looked it up. Ben Bott, as you mentioned, Brinson is no longer on Twitter because of whatever X rules, but he does have a website, and he luckily had this one up. The win probability, if you go for it in that situation, which we were all yelling and screaming at our televisions about, is 89%. If you punt, it's only 79%. But here's the deal. You punt and you still have more than 3/4 of a chance to win the football game. But Brinson, why don't you talk about what happened in terms of how do the Vikings not win this game when they get the ball there?
Well, just really quickly on the 4th and 1, because we had this, me, Nick Costos, Jamie Eisenberg, and Pete Prisco got in this huge argument about this, like lengthy, like screaming, like ended up with like Pete saying something about Nick that's like I can't even repeat on air. But the point being is Nick and I both thought like I'm okay with going for it, and here's why. The Vikings had 4 drives that culminated inside the Chargers 6-yard line, excuse me. They got inside the Chargers 6-yard line 4 times and came away with 10 points. That is really freaking bad. You get that close to the goal line that many times and you come away with 10 points. That's horrendous. So if you're Brandon Staley, you're looking at this and saying this Vikings team has been Vikings it up or charging it up all day on us. They're marching the ball up and down, but just find ways to shoot themselves in the foot. If I go for this, like if I'm Brandon Staley and I know I'm on the hot seat, and he has to know that because the way that he snapped last week with the reporters, go out the way you came in. Go out being you. Go out swinging with your analytics and go for it on 4th and 1. If you can't get a yard there, then what are you doing? What's the point of this team and this offense?
Well, that's the whole point there is that did you watch them run the ball at all? They had 30 total rushing yards up to that point on 15 carries. They were barely averaging 2 yards per carry.
Bootleg Herbert.
Okay, that's fine. Let Herbert throw, but that's not what they did. They called Josh Kelly up the middle, and Josh Kelly had done nothing the entire game.
The play call was a problem, and I think that goes back to sort of like the give and take of these 4th down decision making, where it's like you can. Like the Eagles always going for it on 4th and short, or like going for it on 4th and 1. You have Jalen Hurts in this the quarterback push thing, right? You have a really effective play that you can call on. Well, the Chargers need to have a more effective play call. They need to marry the play calling with the decision to do it.
Josh Kelly averaged 1.1 yards per carry,
and he did not on that last play. He averaged less than that on that last play.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the play call was good. But like, I'm not going to judge the decision based on the outcome. Like, I'm not going to be results based.
That is an absolutely bonkers decision. I mean, there's.
I am judging it. It's insane. Like, I'm judging on the fact that the football gods hate the Chargers.
Yes,
and it's just.
I think if the Chargers punt, they lose the game.
They've had an 80% chance to lose it, according to win it.
The Vikings got that. Like, this is the thing about this game is like you knew this game was going to end in some stupid form or fashion. I joked last week. I was like, there's going to be it's like somebody's going to attempt a 72-yard field goal that's going to get blocked, and then like right before that person walks into the end zone to like on a game-winning block, like he's going to drop the football, and then the other team's going to run it down, then they're going to drop it. It's going to go back the other way. Instead, Brandon Staley goes for it on 4th and 1 on his own 24. The Vikings somehow can't go 24 yards and get a touchdown to win the game, and instead throw an interception and end up losing the game and basically probably put a death knell on their season. I mean, I guess they're still maybe
no. Well, and to the Vikings point,
chance to go into the playoffs.
Wilson, you mentioned that they outcharged the Chargers, and they did that by totally just botching the clock management in the final 45 seconds. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, and the other thing is the very first throw that Kirby made. I have to call him Kirby now, even though he's played pretty well this year. He hit C.J. Osborne. I mean, they were inches away from being a touchdown on the very first play, which would have been a minute and change left. And after that, it was straight downhill, and it culminated with that interception where Alohi Gilman had the PBU against Hawk, and then the ball was intercepted, and that was a wrap. And Brandon Staley could unclench his butt cheeks. By the way, I want to mention quickly. So, look, we used to crush last year Ed Donatel with that super terrible defense he played in Minnesota, where everyone was running wide ass open. To Brian Flores' credit, he is getting after it. And this is the next gen stat that got my attention. The Vikings blitzed Justin Herbert on 40 of his 50 dropbacks, the second highest blitz rate in the next gen series. Herbert averaged 2.26 seconds time to throw, his first game under 2.4 seconds in his career, and had a career high completion percentage over expected. 16% increase. So Justin Herbert, just sort of bring this a full circle.
47, 405, 3 touchdowns. And the only and then Keenan Allen also had a 49-yard bomb to Mike Williams.
Yeah, throw it and catch it. Mike Williams got hurt. We'll see where he is on that. But the reason I mentioned that stat from Next Gen Stats is because to bring it full circle, maybe Justin Herbert still is better than Tua. Although for me, I'm Team Tua until he proves me otherwise.
Well, and you could also make the case too that maybe the Chargers with Keenan Allen being like just sort of the obliterator of single coverage that he is, and like the route runner that he is, and his ability to work like, so how you blitz like crazy like that, you're going to leave yourself open on the back end. Keenan Allen can beat dudes one-on-one, and he can find holes in zones, right? And so 20 targets, 18 catches, 215 yards. Like maybe this wasn't the team to aggressively blitz, or like credit to Kellen Moore and that coaching staff. Sure, the 4th and 1 decision sucked, but they had a really good game plan to go up against Brian Flores in this offense. With 8 minutes left in the second quarter, by the way, this game was 7-0. And then it just got crazy.
Speaking of a paucity of points, you like that alliteration?
Paucity. All
right, listen, man. Robert Saleh continues to say that Zach Wilson is his dude. He said that after the loss to my Mac Jones Patriots. And I mentioned Zach Wilson because this Jets team's defense is really good. And I mentioned Zach Wilson because we just talked about Kirby Cousins, who's in the last year of his deal, and he can be traded. Brinson, are you considering any and all suitors for the quarterback job? Or are you going to pull a Saleh and stick with Zach? And if you're considering these quarterbacks, is Kirby Cousins in the conversation?
Well, couple of things. One, I would like to point out that I correctly called this basically this exact, like how this game would go exactly. Patriots win, Patriots cover, not many points. I know, shocking that area man follows.
What's going to happen tomorrow with the sun? Is it coming up or not?
Right. I don't know. Did you see the report from Jay Glazer on Sunday that and Matt Ryan actually confirmed this to Jeff Kerr, I believe, or somebody. I mean, somebody at CBS confirmed it. Matt Ryan was like, "Yeah, that happened." His agent reached out to the Jets and said, "Hey, would you be interested in Matt?" And Carson Wentz's camp reached out to the Jets too. The Jets told both of them, "No thanks, but no thanks," which means they're going to roll with Zach Wilson. I think at this point, at 1-2, with your one win being an overtime punt return walk off on an insane, just bizarre evening where your defense held its own, but then you get obliterated on your defense. Your defense gets obliterated by the Cowboys, and you lose to the Patriots. Like, I don't know that trading for Kirk Cousins, given all that you've traded for Aaron Rodgers, is necessarily the move. I think it's probably a more a more intelligent move just to be like, all right, let's go with Zach. You're going to see what you have.
Well,
I know you know what you have, but you still drafted him second overall, and it's his third year. And you didn't cut him, you didn't get rid of him. He's your backup for a reason. You can make this season will give you a very clear and defined decision to make after it's over about what you want to do with Zach Wilson.
Yeah, man. I think Vince Lombardi said hope isn't a plan. It just feels like here's what I would come back to. And I don't necessarily hate what you're saying, but if you ask Garrett Wilson on the sidelines on Sunday, would you rather have Kirk Cousins or would you have Zach Wilson? He would drive Zach Wilson to Minnesota, kick him out of the car, and bring Kirk Cousins back, because he has been frustrated the moment Aaron Rodgers went down trying to deal with Zach Wilson. What do you think, Breech?
Yeah, that's absolutely. I don't know if you're Robert Saleh, how you can look your offensive players in the face, knowing, or your defensive players, knowing that
they benched him for Mike White last year.
You're throwing the season away. I mean, this team lost 15-10 to the Patriots. If you have a competent quarterback in there, you maybe win this game, and then you're 2-1. It's a completely different thing. And there is something to be said for what you guys are talking about as far as, do you want to give up more compensation because of what you gave up for Aaron Rodgers? But if you don't, then you have to go out and sign a Matt Ryan or a Carson Wentz. And it's not that those guys aren't an upgrade over Zach Wilson, because they are. It's that they have to get acclimated and learn this offense. They have to build up chemistry with these receivers, and you can't just throw a new quarterback in there. And I think that's kind of Robert Saleh's hesitation. But again, you have that bye coming up in October 22nd, week 7. And if you can be 2-4, just win one of your next 3 games, you play the Chiefs, Broncos, and Eagles. Maybe you can beat the Broncos with Zach Wilson.
I was about to say, you really have to beat the Broncos.
And then you trade for Kirk Cousins or sign Matt Ryan or sign Carson Wentz. They have 2 weeks to get to know and learn the offense. And then coming out of the bye, you play the New York Giants, who aren't that great. So it's almost like getting a practice game before you actually have to play your real games. So you got to make a decision soon. And I don't know how he can justify to his team sticking with Wilson.
If you want to go get Matt Ryan and pay him, that's fine with me. I don't want Carson Wentz. Dude, Carson Wentz ain't gonna be good for this. Like, what's Carson Wentz gonna do? Like, Matt
Ryan would not want to do this after the first hit.
He clearly right. I mean, but he reached out. I'm just saying, like, if you want to do Matt Ryan, fine. I don't want to give up any more. If you can get Kirk Cousins for a 5th round pick or something, well, I mean, you can't give up a 1st round pick for Cousins.
Well, yeah, I don't know, but I mean,
you lost your 2nd round pick. I'm just saying, like, Minnesota's not going to call it in on the season without getting something significant in return for Cousins, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, that's right. But here's the other thing. You're all in if you're the Packers. What's one more? I mean, here's the way I think about it. Would Les Snead do it? Absolutely. He'd be like, yep, I don't need these 1st round picks. I mean, that's very famously been on a t-shirt, and they won a Super Bowl.
I just think this Jets offensive line is a problem. It is. I don't think
Dwayne Brown was on IR, and they had to move Mekhi back to the left side.
Yeah, like, I don't think the Jets are winning a bunch of games this year, regardless of who's quarterback. And I honestly think, and this is, the benefit of, like, can't be proven wrong, Hines/foresight, but I don't know that they're a playoff team with Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, stop it. We'll never know how he's going to play this year, but
I know,
he was
right?
certainly not.
And I
great.
can't even make my famous suggestion of trade for Gardner Minshew because there's no way the Colts are giving him up now.
No way. He's a starter. There's a quarterback controversy.
They're
in
not giving up unless
Indianapolis.
you offer a first-round pick. Yeah.
I just don't think the Jets have any business trading away more assets trying to chase a season that probably is lost anyway. Like I would
They're 1-2.
rather.
They're 1-2. And Breech is one of Breech's favorite teams at 1-2. The team that beat them 15-10.
Boom.
They
The
should
New
be
England
0-3, and they're probably going to end up being like 1-5 by the time that we get to their bye.
Yeah, and they will still not have Kirk Cousins or Matt Ryan or Phillip Rivers or anyone else. It'll be Zach Wilson. All right. Going to round it out with this. The Sunday Night Football get together. Truly terrible football. Truly terrible decisions. And again, just like the Chargers-Vikings game, I'm going to start at the end. And Brinson, I want you to explain something to me. You look like a smart guy.
That's a lie.
23-15.
I mean, I do, but you're lying.
I don't lie. Often. 23-15. And there's 3:15 to go in the fourth quarter. And Josh McDaniels, in his infinite wisdom, who learned under the best, Bill Belichick, again, down by 8, sends out the field goal team. The Steelers, in their infinite stupidity, get called for, what's the thing when you jump on the guy's head?
Leverage.
Gets called for leverage.
You have leverage, ye say.
Or leverage if you're in England. So the drive continues.
1st and 10 at the Pittsburgh 14. You're down by 8.
And they get down to the 8-yard line, the Raiders do. Now with 2:25 to go, you got to go for it, I would imagine. And Josh McDaniels goes for it with Daniel Carson's foot to make it a 23-15 game, or 23-18 game, excuse me. And doesn't onside on the ensuing kickoff. So on what planet are you kicking a field goal when you're down 8 with 2 minutes to go?
We touched on this before we went live on the show. And I mean, I think we're probably all in agreement here. Like, I thought the first attempt when he went for it, and Chris Collinsworth and Mike Tirica were pretty apoplectic about this as well. Like 4th and 5 at Pittsburgh's 29. You've gone and gotten a touchdown on that pass to Devontae Adams, and you've been like pretty. I guess you didn't have any fourth downs on that drive, but you go get the touchdown. You get the 2-point conversion because you got the pass interference, and then you're able to, Jimmy G hits the Notre Dame tight end Mayer. You cut it to 8 points. You're down 8. Like, I get it if you want to kick that first field goal at 4th and 5 at Pittsburgh 29. Daniel Carson's a good kicker. It's indoors. He kicks very well at home. You cut it down to 5. You can win with a touchdown. You could potentially walk it off. You kind of trust your defense. You've got 4 timeouts if you count the 2-minute warning. There's a lot of time left, and you feel like you're going to get the ball back because you just did. And Matt Canada might turtle up a little bit. But as we talked about, when you accept that penalty on Pittsburgh for leverage and you get 15 yards and it becomes 1st and 10 at Pittsburgh's 14, you are effectively saying, I'm no longer kicking a field goal. That has to be your thought process, because you now, if you do what they do, even if you run no huddle, even if you have 2 incompletions, you still are going to have about 2.5 minutes on the clock when Daniel Carlson kicks that field goal, which he did from 26 yards on 4th and 4 at Pittsburgh's 8. Now look, 4th and 4 from the 8, that's a tough spot. You got condensed field. You got to get 4 yards to pick up the first down. TJ Watt is firing into the backfield every single snap. But you have just burned like a minute and a half of clock. You cannot possibly kick that field goal and then just assume you're going to stop it, because if you do not stop, if the Steelers get 1 first down, you're going to have like 20 seconds if you get the ball back. And that's what happened. And then they fumbled the punt and you had 12 seconds. And so, like, to me, that was absolutely ludicrous to do. You have to go for it there. And if you don't get them, then you get a chance to stop them, and they're going to run the ball 3 times anyway.
So, Breech, as a special teams correspondent, make it make sense.
So I agree with Brinson, as he said. We talked about we had a strong talk about this beforehand, but like you said, Brinson, with 3:10 left, it's not a completely crazy decision. But after the penalty, now you're down to 2:22 on that 4th down. You're at the 8-yard line. You have to get the touchdown. But here's what Josh McDaniels is thinking. His thought process is that there's only about 5 things that can happen here, and no matter what happens, it's 4th and 4 from Pittsburgh's 8-yard line. Our defense has to make a stop. If I kick the field goal here, we're down 23-18. We still have to get a stop and get the ball back. If I kick a field goal and miss, we still have to get a stop and get the ball back. If I go for it on 4th down here and I do not get it, we are down 23-15. I have to get a stop and get the ball back. If we score a touchdown and we do not get the 2-point conversion, we have to get a stop and get the ball back. If we get a touchdown and we get the 2-point conversion, we have to make a stop because it's only a tie game, and we have to make sure the Steelers don't win. So every situation you're looking at involves your defense making a stop. And so McDaniels is thinking, we have to make a stop anyway, so why don't I just take the 2-point conversion out of play? That's the least I can do for my team because I feel like that is the highest percentage thing in my head right now. And I'm not saying that's right. Again, I wouldn't have done it with 2:22 left. Probably more likely to do it on that first 4th down. But as Brinson said, once you accept that penalty and you're burning more time off the clock, you have to get the touchdown. And they didn't. But his thought process just blew my mind because, as I told you guys, they were in the same situation beginning of the 4th quarter with 13 minutes left. They had a 4th and 5 from the Steelers 22, and they went for it. And if they would have kicked a field goal there, they would have cut it down to 23-10, which would have meant they wouldn't have need 2 touchdowns and 2 2-point conversions. Instead, went for it, didn't get it. So it's just McDaniel's mind was all over the place. None of his logic didn't make sense. So it's just crazy.
So let's end on this. Remember last year when the Raiders started 1-4 and then they were 2-7 and they lost their last 3 and last 4 or 5. And we were talking about Josh McDaniel potentially being on the hot seat and Mark Davis. Neither Mark Davis nor his bowl cut were going to have that. Are we getting close to that? I mean, look, Jimmy Garoppolo is serviceable. Devontae Adams is a Hall of Famer. But Josh McDaniels has made a lot of head-scratching decisions that on some level cost his team wins. So how far down? If 1 to 10 on the hot seat and 10 is Brandon Staley, what number are we giving Josh McDaniels?
3.5.
What should it be? What should the Brinson hot seat meter be for Josh McDaniels?
Well,
give me a number and then you can talk.
6.5.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
I mean, McDaniels, like, Mark Davis really doesn't want to fire another coach, a big name coach who he'd pursued aggressively. He's tied to the front office with Dave Ziegler. You had the built-in excuse, and like you can say whatever you want, but it is a reasonable excuse that Mike Mayock and John Gruden left the cupboard very, very, very bare. I think it's like 13 first-round picks in 5 years, and maybe it's like 7 in 3 years or whatever it is, and they botched almost all of them. And I'm not trying to prop up Josh McDaniels. I'm just saying, like, if I'm running the Raiders and I've spent all this money on McDaniels to bring him over, and I'm already feel like I'm, the John, we kind of got the John Gruden thing but I think there's still some financials there that they're like, wait, you're not the Walton family is what I'm saying. You don't want to pay Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels has a huge contract. You do not want
not good night, not John Boy Waltons. You mean Sam Walton?
Sam Walton, exactly. Yeah. You're not the Broncos ownership, and you're not David Tepper. Like, you don't want to be paying Josh McDaniels' contract and then have to go hire another coach, because inevitably that's going to cause you to be a little cheaper on your coaching hire. And I think that because of the failures of those first round picks by Mayock and by Gruden, you're more likely to give McDaniels time. And you're in this first year with Jimmy G. They've been in some, I don't know. Like, I don't think his seat is hot. I thought it was crazy that people were saying it was hot last year. And I think
they're a bad football team. I don't think it's crazy.
Right. But like internally, you're pinning it all on.
That's fine. But I mean, this is the hallmark of mediocre organizations. That's my point. I mean, if you want to win, you can make all the excuses you want and blame. You can play Game of Thrones, but at the end of the day, you're still a terrible football.
I mean, don't you agree though that like the roster is like bereft of talent thanks to John Gruden?
That
and Mike
roster is
Mayock?
not terrible. I mean, have you seen the Bears roster? Like, that's a team that's not going to win a football game. You could argue that
it's like, hey, have you seen the worst team in football? Yes, I have. They're terrible.
Well, my point is that this team, what was it? Do you know off the top of your head the over/under for the Raiders coming in?
It was about the same. It was under the Bears.
Oh, that's crazy town. Breech, what
the
do you
Bears
think?
were 7.5. The Raiders were 6.5.
Breech, what's the hot seat meter? The official
I agree with Brinson. I don't think there's any chance Mark Davis fires Josh McDaniels, so I'll put it at a 2.5. But if this was a normal franchise that was not owned by one person who makes all the unilateral decisions, then I would say that it'd be a 7.
Yeah. No, I
Right,
think-
like if this are the Browns where Jimmy Haslam's like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and like is willing to spend money on coaches he's firing, it's a lot more likely he's fired. I mean, what Colton Miller, I mean, we'll count Devontae. I know he's not a first round pick, but like, you know, they traded first round picks for him. So like Colton Miller, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, who's a previous regime. Miller was too. Tyree Wilson. I mean, those are your first round picks who are in your starting like in your starting lineup. Like, I don't know, man. I don't think it's a very good football team.
I think we agree in terms of
Mark
the
Davis is trying to talk himself into thinking he has a Zach Taylor. 2 wins, 4 wins, and then Super Bowl.
Yeah. And what changed Zach Taylor's fortunes?
Zach Taylor he became a better coach, Ryan.
That's well, then he
He
needs
signed up for yoga.
he needs to sign up.
Well,
down to
maybe this wouldn't be the worst year in the world to be a terrible football team if you're the Raiders.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, you get Quinn Ewers. All right, that's it.
Drake May.
I don't know if you want Drake May. That's
Okay.
a conversation for another time.
Whoa, really?
All right. Emory Jones, quarterback Cincinnati. That's it. That's a wrap on Sunday Night Super Friends. But don't worry, we'll see you guys back here next Sunday night. In the meantime, check out the Pick Six podcast all week on NFL on CBS or wherever you get your pods. All right. Thank all you guys who hung out with us in the chat.
Where'd you get
We
your teleprompter?
appreciate you. What's that?
Where'd you get your teleprompter?
For Brinson, for Breech, for producer Harry, I'm Wilson. See you guys next week.